Welcome back to another best wildcard team video, this time ahead of Double Gameweek 29, the biggest Double Gameweek of the season with 12 teams doubling. Now, I'm not going to show you the best 50-man squad to bench boost because if you're wildcarding, you can't use the bench boost or any other chip in the same game week. But if you want to see me build the best 50-man squad for the bench boost, then let me know. I can make that into a separate video, as well as the best free hit team video, the team selection, and the transfer tips all headed your way ahead of Double Gameweek 29. So let's get straight into this video. Let's try to get this over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and new goals such as 2,000 followers on Twitter and Instagram. That'd be greatly appreciated. We're going to continue on growing and it's all thanks to all of you. But let's get straight into this video and dissect the best 15-man squad for the wildcard up until the end of the season. Whilst you have some alternatives like Nick Pope, Jason Steele and David De Gea amongst others, I would still go for David Raya and Kepa Arrizabalaga because the fixtures complement each other. When Kepa Arrizabalaga has a tough game, David Raya has a decent one and vice versa. So if we look at the next kind of 6 fixtures, in Game Week 29 I would favour Kepa Arrizabalaga, 2 home fixtures against Aston Villa and Liverpool, whilst Brentford are away to Brighton and Man United. Then you look at Game Week 30 and Brentford are at home to Newcastle, whilst Chelsea are away to Wolves, and I'd probably favour Kepa Arrizabalaga once again in that instant. But then in Game Week 31, Chelsea face Brighton at home and Brentford face Wolves away. So then I would play Brentford keeper David Raya in Game Week 31. In 32, Chelsea will blank, but you have David Raya to cover there against Aston Villa at home. So once again, you look at Game Week 33, they face each other. Chelsea are at home, so you might favour Kepa Arrizabalaga there. But in 34, Brentford are at home to Nottingham Forest, while Chelsea are away to Arsenal. So as you can see, the fixtures balance out very nicely, and you have good goalkeeper options on paper anyway, every single game week by going for David Raya and Kepa Arrizabalaga. If you want to go for a kind of cheap goalkeeper, then Forster's decent just to sit on your bench and not have too much money invested in that position. But I would honestly go for Raya and Kepa Arrizabalaga still, although you can consider David De Gea, Nick Pope and Jason Steele. Of course you can, but I would still go for these 2 Spaniards. I think they'll get the job done and rotate very nicely. If you have a free hit in your back pocket to use in Game Week 32, this is the 5-man defence I would go for, and I think John Stones would stand out as the most surprising choice because I've said for weeks now that Erling Haaland's the only Man City player you want and nobody else, but John Stones has been quite nailed on since returning from injury, and before his injury he was also starting every single game, and he's a good option in FPL and UCL Fantasy, and he can get these bonus points. When City win a game narrowly like they did against Palace, Stones can accumulate those bonus points to get 7, 8 or 9 overall, so I think he's a good option. And the only issue I think with this 5-man defence, which I alluded to earlier, is the fact that the likes of Stones, Shaw, Chilwell and Estupiñán will all blank in Game Week 32 because of the FA Cup semi-finals. Chelsea are the only team to not reach the FA Cup semi-finals, but they were actually scheduled to play Man United, and that's why they will blank in 32 as well. So if you don't have the free hit and you want a wild card now, you are in a bit of a pickle because you're going to have to go for worse defenders who can then cover 32, or you can go for at least 3 of these defenders that you see on screen, but then start to trim them down as we approach Game Week 32. But as Game Week 28 demonstrated in terms of blank game weeks, it's not just about the quantity of players you have for a blank, it's about the quality of players. I saw some people with 7, 8, 9 players getting 60, 70 points. I had 11 and I only scored 49. So it does show you that sometimes the right captaincy decision, having the right players as well, having a bit of luck sometimes, but still, the blank game weeks aren't just about the quantity, and therefore you can still go for a really solid backline for the next few game weeks and then start to trim it down as you get closer to blank game week 32. Trippier remains, but I have to say my patience is wearing thin and you don't have to go for him. I think maybe a few months ago I'd have said he's absolutely essential. He's the only defender that is kind of nailed on every single week in the best wildcard team. Nowadays it's not the same, but I am expecting some clean sheets for Newcastle, and they also don't blank in 32, so he's a massive plus to navigate the next few game weeks, and he could also have a double in 31. The same goes for Estupiñán, as Newcastle and Brighton could have a double in that game week, and I have to say with Estupiñán, there are some concerns about him starting the first game of 29. I don't share that. I think there is a chance, of course, that he's benched, but I think he'll start both games in 29, and he'll be a very good option until the end of the season. And as for Chilwell, he was very frustrating in Game Week 28, but the performance was there. He also got returns in the 2 previous game weeks, and he's a fantastic option when he's fully fit and can get some games running and have that match sharpness. And as for Luke Shaw, I think United are still in contention for all the competitions bar the Premier League, but they'll still be looking to finish strongly, get that 3rd place finish, and then get another trophy under their bag as well. There will be rotation, I think, for Man United after the international break, but Luke Shaw should start pretty much every single game, and he can get bonus points and assists, as we all know. As usual, the midfield is the most difficult position to assemble because you have so many different options. You've got Rodrigo, Harrison from Leeds, who look very enticing. You could even take a punt on a Jared Bowen, Ben Rama, Morgan Gibbs-White, not to mention Solly March, McAllister, and Mohamed Salah. But I've gone for this midfield five, and just like with the defence, I think the big problem is Gameweek 32, and I think this wildcard team will probably push you towards that free hit in that blank game week. But I still think it's worth it, and you have a lot of these Brighton, Man United, and Man City assets, and they're the best in the game in most positions, especially in the midfield. I think a double up in Man United midfield is definitely worth it, but once again, if you don't have that free hit and you want a wild card now, instead of Fernandes, you can consider Salah, you can go for Solly March as well, and you don't have to go for this exact midfield five, and even a double up in Arsenal midfield is still viable. Look at Martinelli's form. Of course, I have Bukayo Saka in here, but you don't have to go for this exact midfield five, of course, but I still think this is the best one to assemble on the Gameweek 29 wildcard. Maddison has some great fixtures. The only bad game is 31 against Man City away. Every other fixture looks really good on paper, and he is capable of scoring at the Etihad. Let's not forget that. A great double in 29, a fantastic fixture in Gameweek 30, a plum one against Bournemouth, and you've got some good home games afterwards as well. And the only away game after, apart from City, is Leeds in Gameweek 33. So I have to say Maddison looks really enticing. Bukayo Saka is so consistent over the course of the season, and he's the only Premier League player to register double digits in goals and assists, so I think he is still kind of a lock-in on the wild card. You don't have to go for him, but I personally would. His consistency is almost unrivaled in the midfield position, and I've gone for Bruno Fernandes, who has been very consistent since the World Cup. And while the returns have slowed down a little bit, and he can get these double-digit returns, but every 2 or 3 games, and there's going to be some blanks in between, he showed what he can do against Fulham in the FA Cup, scoring a brace in that game as well. Marcus Rashford is an injury doubt, but as I alluded to in the team selection video, I wouldn't be too concerned. And really, if they're still flagged by the time we get to the deadline, then maybe I'd consider it and have some backup plans just in case. But I'm very confident Rashford will be available for the Premier League games and all the other matches for Man United, and all of these kind of withdrawals from the international games are kind of tactical from, Ten Hag's perspective and Pep Guardiola in regards to Erling Haaland. And the final midfielder is Matoma. You can take your pick from the Brighton midfielders, and I see some of you with 3 of them to kind of cover all bases. That's completely fine. I think I'd only go for 2 Brighton midfielders max though on the wild card, and if I had to pick, it'd be Matoma and March, just like I selected in Gameweek 26. But McAllister's still a decent option, and Brighton have so many good options in every single position that, to be fair, you can go for any triple up and you'll probably be happy in the end. So that is the midfield 5 I've gone for. Let me know if you disagree. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of cries or complaints about Salah not being there, and I can understand that, but I think if anything, Salah is probably a better buy in Gameweek 30 onwards than he is in 29, with 2 away fixtures against Chelsea and Manchester City. We have a very different looking front three, and if you look at the fixtures over the next 6, none of them are that great for any of these teams, but I would back Watkins, Haaland and Isak to deliver the goods in most of these matches coming up. And in the case of Watkins and Isak, they feature in Blank Gameweek 32. If you're looking to navigate that period, Haaland's the only one from the front three who will blank, but I'd still go for him. And to be honest, there's not much to separate Haaland and Harry Kane in my opinion, but if I had to pick, it would go to the Norwegian. Despite his withdrawal from the international games due to a groin injury, I'd still be fairly confident he'll be available, and Man City will still be gunning for that Premier League title to try claw back that 8-point deficit to Arsenal. Now, with Ollie Watkins, he's got a decent double. I don't think Aston Villa will keep clean sheets in those games, but they can score goals, and Ollie Watkins is still the main source of that, despite only getting an assist in a 3-0 victory over Bournemouth, and he's got some decent games afterwards. Once again, nothing spectacular, but that Nottingham Forest fixture in Gameweek 30 looks really good. Then it gets a bit worse with Newcastle at home, Brentford away, Fulham at home and Man United away, but you'd still expect Watkins to get some goals even in those difficult games. As for Erling Haaland, I mean, any game he could haul in, but particularly in home matches where all 6 of his hat-tricks this season, or is it now 7? I've lost count. All of them have come in home games, and Haaland, we all know how good he is, but we can't underestimate Harry Kane. There's only around 20 points separating those two, so you can make a case for going for both Harry Kane and Haaland, or Harry Kane over the Norwegian, but I'm going to go for him instead. And as for Isak, he's been very promising whenever he has played, and even off the bench he scored on occasion. He scored 2 penalties this season as well, which also adds more to his game, but overall, you can still go for Havertz for the double in 29, I have to say, and we'll talk about this in other videos as well. You've also got Harry Kane, as I mentioned, and a few others that still deserve an honourable mention too. But I think this is the best three on the wildcard, and I'll be interested to see who ends up being the highest scoring forward from this point onwards to Game Week 38. But the other forward I haven't even mentioned is Ivan Toney, and I think the main reason why he doesn't feature is because he's one yellow card away from suspension. So if I do have Toney in my normal team, I'd probably keep him in most cases, but on a wild card, I think it's just better to be safe and go for Isak and go for these other forwards as well. I'm looking to buy Haaland in for Ivan Toney anyway, but I might delay that transfer for Game Week 30, so it all depends. These wildcard videos do help people, even that aren't wildcarding in these certain game weeks, with their transfer plans, ideas for the best players to get in each position. But in the case of Erling Haaland, you can delay that move to Game Week 30. You don't have to do it necessarily just yet. And Ivan Toney, if he can go through that Brighton game unscathed, he doesn't get the yellow, he can play both games, do very well, and then you can easily sell him in Game Week 30, because then the fixtures turn very soon for Brentford around Game Week 33. So that is the 15-man squad. Let's now go to FPL.team, sort out the bench and the captaincy with some kind of quick thoughts in those regards, and wrap up this video. Inevitably, there's going to be some disagreements in the comment section down below, because some of the players we're benching are going to probably do really well in Game Week 29, like Luke Shaw, Bukayo Saka. I think John Stones is the easiest to bench, so even if he keeps a clean sheet, I think that makes more sense on paper. And this bench could easily get you 20 or 30 points, so that would be frustrating. And some of you might even think, well, on the wildcard, I want to take money off my bench and put it in the starting 11. But you also have to think about Game Week 32. If you don't have the free hit, you also want a bit of squad depth to be able to cover for the absentees of Brighton, Man United, Man City, and Chelsea, which could be a huge issue for you as well. And I have to be honest, I don't want to just fit in players for the sake of it to cover all these different game weeks, like 32 as well, especially if you have the free in your back pocket and go for players like Tyrone Ming. So I don't really expect to do that well, apart from the odd fixture like Game Week 30 against Nottingham Forest at home. But in terms of the captaincy, if he is fit, I would go for Marcus Rashford, and the vice captaincy would be a bit more difficult, I think, to kind of decide on. But you could even say Bruno Fernandes, Matoma, or any other Brighton midfielder you go for, James Maddison, and you could even take a punt on another player as well. But I think the midfielders is where I put the captaincy on, and Marcus Rashford is my favourite right now. But you have to say, any single one of those four midfielders you see on screen look good. Even Salah, for those of you going with him, is also a decent choice as well. But I am concerned about Liverpool's away record, which we'll also talk about in more detail in other videos, as we're going to include some Liverpool players in some other different squads too, to make things a little bit interesting. But there you go. I think that bench is a bit concerning to say the least, but you have a really good platform until the end of the season. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What would you change in this wildcard squad? But I think the rotation works very well in all these game weeks, and if you decide to go for Harry Kane instead of Haaland in Game Week 29, even on the wildcard, you can bring Haaland back in 30, and I think you'll do a pretty good job too. Do not forget how good Harry Kane is, how consistent he has been this season, and a few other options like Salah, who could enter the equation very soon. But in Game Week 29, I would favour other players, I believe, even the likes of Solly March potentially, and that's something that might spark a bit of debate, but that's just my honest opinion. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and FPL League. So all of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Double Gameweek 29, and I hope you enjoy the international break, if that's even possible, and I'll see you next time.